Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Cohen. Today I'm going to talk to you about the myth of the best month to take the SAT. So you may have heard this before, that there's a best and a worst month to take the test. Some people will say that during a certain test date, maybe December, the students aren't as well prepared and thus the curve is easy. And on a certain date, maybe October, the students are really prepared and thus the curve is, because they're rising seniors, and so the curve is difficult. Well, this isn't true. So the SAT isn't curved in any traditional sense. It is true that, say, if you get 51 questions right in math on the October test, you may get a 720, and then if you get the same amount of questions right on the November test, you may get a 700 or a 690. So that's called the scoring table. They use a raw score, the number of questions you get right, to determine your official score for that section. And the relationship between the raw score and the official score varies a bit from test to test. But it doesn't vary because of a curve. It varies because of the difficulty of the questions. So, that's right, College Board bases the scoring table purely on the difficulty of the questions. It's not based in any way on student performance or student ability. Okay, so how do they do this? They do this by, first, there's two parts. The first is that before they even administer the test, they come up with a tentative scoring table, which is based on the difficulty of the questions. So if they feel that there's a lot of difficult questions, it'll be a more lenient scoring table. And if they feel that there aren't that many difficult questions, it's an easier test, the scoring table will be a little bit more strict. Okay, so, and they have a good sense of question difficulty because their job day in and day out is writing, questions, and there's hundreds of questions a year and 7 tests a year. For the most part, I think they have a good sense of the difficulty of the questions they write. So after the test is administered, they tweak the scoring table just a little bit. So they may find that students missed more questions and performed more poorly than they thought they would. So they may say to themselves, well, this test was a little more difficult than we thought, and then let's go ahead and make the scoring table a little bit more lenient and a little bit easier. But how do they do that? How do they know that it wasn't the case that the students who took the test missed more questions because it was, let's say, a weaker batch of students than normal? Well, they know that this is or isn't the case because of a process they use called equating. So equating it's pretty complicated. And if you look at the article on my website where I talk about this issue, I include a link to the official paper from the College Board that describes in a lot of technical detail the process of equating. But I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what equating is at its essence. So what equating is it means that there's one section on the SAT, the experimental section, which doesn't actually count toward your score. And so what the test makers do is they put some questions in that section that past test makers have been tested on. So they call this the anchor test. And so what this does is it allows the College Board to compare student performance and to really compare student ability on the current test to historical tests. So the College Board knows if the students taking this recent test are performing at the same level as the average historical test taker, worse, or better. So in sum, what equating allows the College Board to do is, if they have a test where the test makers perform really well, and they know because of equating that was an unusually strong and able group of test takers, they're not going to make the curve more difficult. So equating allows them to make sure that the scoring table on each test is based purely on the actual difficulty of the questions and not on student ability. And make sure that how difficult they think the questions are is not in any way influenced by the strength of the particular group of test takers who took that test. Historical data actually bears this out pretty clearly. There's a tutor based in New Jersey called Eric the Red who has compiled data from the past couple of years, and he's shown that the scoring tables vary randomly from test date to test date. So we don't see that the October test or any test, for example, has an easier or more difficult scoring table. And you can find the link to Eric's data on my website in this article about the myth of the best month to take the test. Why is this the case? Why doesn't the College Board score the test on a more conventional scale, on a conventional curve? It makes sense that they don't, because if 650 on the October test was the same as a 700 on the December test, that would be disastrous for colleges who are trying to objectively compare students based on these scores. The colleges depend on the test for providing a reliable, consistent, and objective assessment of student ability. So when should you take the SAT? You should take the SAT when you're really prepared to take it. Pick a test date that's going to allow you ample time to get yourself ready for the test, but don't worry about what particular month that test is.